I'm joined here today by Dr. Stanley Barr of MITRE Engage and Dr. Frank Stech. Dr. Frank Stech was one of the authors of Cyber Denial, Deception, and Counterdeception. And today we're going to have a conversation on sort of this book, kind of what this looks like in 2022, and then where we're going in the future. So before we jump into all that, Dr. Stech, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Where to start? I guess people might be interested that I've been at MITRE since 1981. That's a long time ago, and have been with MITRE uh, basically continuously, except for about a 5 or 6 year outage when I went with the MITRE spin-off, which is called in those days MITRE Tech Systems, is now a company called Noblis. And for a number of years, I supported various agencies with Noblis. But in 2000, I came back to MITRE and have been back at MITRE since. However, um, I had a parallel career in the U.S. Army Reserve, and MITRE was very liberal in letting me go anytime the Army needed me. So I deployed a few times during those years with MITRE, and literally took a year off here and there and months at a time to do deployments with the U.S. Army Reserve. And it's related to what we're talking about because in my career, I was a military intelligence officer, but half of the time I spent in the military, I supported psychological operations, which has major responsibility for participating in deception operations, or MILDEC, military deception as it's called. And the names change over the years as the as the military is wont to do, but deception was part of the work I did in special operations and in military intelligence. In military intelligence, I was largely involved in counter-deception, in trying to penetrate the deception operations of adversaries. So when I came back to MITRE, Chris Alsacer and I participated in some independent research to look at ways to systematize counter-deception operations. And those became fairly useful for a number of projects subsequently. Real work that by and large I don't talk about, but it has also led to some counter fraud techniques that were licensed by MITRE under the name of turbo fraud. And we developed this to see if we could predict companies that were very likely to use either manipulative financial filings for manipulation of investors and so forth, or were engaged in outright fraud. In other words, the numbers weren't really real, but they were in such a pattern that they would indicate a possible fraudulent activity. And turbo fraud has actually been used by venture capitalists to look at possible places to avoid or things that they were researching. So it is licensed from MITRE by a variety of people. As we developed our basically counter deception work, I became active with Kristen Heckman. We lectured with MITRE people and gave courses and technical exchange meetings with MITRE people. And of course, the question we always got was, well, tell us about cyber deception and cyber counter deception. Now, neither Kristen nor I were in cybersecurity at the time. And we looked at each other and we said, you know, if we're going to get this question every time, we better do something. So we started to look into it and we started to think about it. And we got some IR&D money from MITRE and from Vipin Swarup and others that let us get into it a little deeper. And Irv Leishow at MITRE asked us to come down to the Pentagon and brief a few folks. And it was kind of an ambiguous meeting, but the bottom line was, okay, write us a white paper. And the white paper was our best effort at saying, why would you want to do this? Why would you want this? Why do you need this? And how might you do this? And also, don't try this at home, kids, a professional driver, all that. Things to be careful about when you try to do this. We wrote that paper and didn't hear too much back, but every time I'd bump into Irv, he'd say, you guys should keep working. So I kind of got the message between the lines that, and Vipin was good enough to say, write the book. And so we did. We got a number of cybersecurity professionals, uh, Alex So, Ben Schmoker, and uh, Rashawn Thomas, who do this every day for a living and really know what they're doing, and also appreciated how cyber deception could fit into that schema. So the five of us wrote this book. Four of us are still at MITRE. Ben has gone off to a company over on the West Coast where he came from. And so Springer was very generous in offering us a contract that let us offer this book to anybody in the government, offer this book to anybody at MITRE. And so the book has had some reception, and that's how that book came about. Um, Both Kristen and I were good friends with Bart Whaley, who we knew personally for decades, literally. Kristen and MITRE were responsible for creating what's known as the Barton Whaley Deception Collection, which is now at the National Defense Intelligence University. The National Intelligence University took it over from CIA, which was where it originally lived in the CIA library. But as the folks at Langley decided, I guess, to consolidate things, they moved that library over to the National Intelligence University in Bethesda. Bart Whaley is probably the foremost writer of deception literature in the United States, and both of us had the pleasure of working with him over time. Um, I actually, in fact, went to a meeting, saw Bart, and I said, "What are you up to, Bart?" And he says, "I'm trying to sell my collection of materials." And I knew he had a huge, huge collection. And I happened to sit next to the guy at the Foreign Denial and Deception Committee, who I knew was responsible for deception training through the intelligence community. I said, "So what are you up to, Kent?" And he said, "Well, we're trying to buy a really good collection of materials for our courseware and for our library and so forth." And I said, "So where are you sitting? Why don't you sit over here with me and Bart?" And I introduced these guys, and that led eventually to them funding MITRE to put together this library of materials, both Bart's and everything else we could sweep into that library collection. So the book had many fathers and mothers and some pretty good pedigree with respect to where did we come from. And at the time, where we wanted to go was to help people understand aspects of deception that are not always obvious. Like you can do you can do a tremendous amount of deception with the truth. People think it's all lies and all fakery and magic tricks like David Copperfield, and a lot of it is, and a lot of it can be. But really skillful deception operations make a great deal of use of the truth. It's just not the whole truth and nothing but the truth. There's other things. So you manage information flow for influence. Now that's not so uncommon from a whole lot of other realms, including education, for example. So many fields can inform deception operations. And that was one of the messages we wanted to put in that book. Another message we wanted to put in that book, it isn't all art. There is a degree of engineering and science here. We can build on the sciences that deal with influence, with a behavioral modification, with belief modification and sustaining belief. But we can also use engineering techniques. And one of the things I found was the maturity models. People have evolved ways of scoring, if in effect, the level of maturity of different things. And one of the things we felt was important was, what kind of people are you going to use to do this? What kind of processes are you going to use to do this? What kind of science and technology and uh, techniques are you going to use to do this? And one of the one of the innovations that I had was, excuse me, was the notion that deception is really a service industry. It's a service industry with two customers. One is your friendly side, and those are the people that are asking you to support what they're doing with deception and counter-deception operations. So that's a customer. And you need to know what your customer needs. You need to know what they're willing to pay and what they're willing to invest in and what their parameters are, their lines in the road, the lanes in the road. But you have another customer, and that is the target of the deception. And this is a bit of a counterintuitive insight. You want to make your customer as satisfied as possible. You want them to buy your cover story completely and be totally happy with it. And if you can achieve that, you have become a real deception master, because they believe they know what it is that's real. And you've influenced them to get there. And that aids your side. So you sustain that, you maintain a customer service relationship, just like Nordstrom's might do. Nordstrom's still around, like Amazon might do. And that enables you to continue influence over a longer period of time. You want that customer to come back. You want them to come back to you for information, for all sorts of things that they believe is part of their reality, and you make it part of their reality. You have to engage the blue side just as much as you engage the red side, and that's part of the customer service business of deception. So there's a maturity model for that as well, and we tried to use that to help organizations figure out, where are we on our maturity scale for these various dimensions? How do I get to the next level, and so forth? And that basically is what we attempted to do in that 2015 effort. So I went on for a long time. Apologize.
Hey, Frank.
No, that was all fantastic.
Hey, can I ask you a question? What was your favorite part of the book? Right, like when you think about, like, when you look at this book, you did a bunch of work here. What do you think was, like, this is the part that I liked the most in the book? Like, I'm sure there's like one chapter. Let's not go into the chapter that was like, I hope I never see this chapter again. But can you tell me what your favorite part was when you were doing this?
We we wanted to do some use cases without stepping over any lines. One use case we developed was straight out of the support for the classified contractor DIB, the defense industrial base world of, let's build the next weapons system. How do we use cyber deception, counter deception to cover that activity and do it realistically? So we had a use case to defeat espionage by what are known as APTs, the Advanced Persistent Threat. These are nation states that are able to afford serious cyber espionage, and they do it. There's a number of them, and they do it. How do you defeat them, or how do you influence them with deception was one of the use cases. And today we are faced with the problem that a lot of people are interested in attacking cyber physical systems. What we need to do is think about how cyber deception and counter deception can help alleviate those problems. And I've seen research to that effect. Um, I know you wanted to ask where do I think things are going, and coincidentally, some folks asked me, so what does the picture look like to you for cyber deception? And of course, what we've seen is starting in 2015, Gartner and others began to point to the fact that there was technology coming along for deception operations in a defensive mode, active cyber defense using deception. And companies are beginning to vend this. And at the time, there were a handful, and now there's probably, I don't know, Stan, 24 at least that have some claim to fame with cyber deception. So the deception technology business has certainly taken off and has offered a variety of approaches to using this. The research world has exploded. Uh, I can't keep up with it. I try my best, but some of the research thrusts are game theory, uh, deception as part of decision aids and automation or semi-automation and planning systems. How do you automate some of the logic that you need to do deception operations? And how do you make those choices? So game theory and decision logic go together there and help make choices like that. And the machine learning and the machine intelligence can do this for very complex architectures where humans might have a hard time. Um, Deception as a service. Everything is out there in the cloud and you can sign up for it, and there it is. It comes, it's already packaged for you. Uh, we're beginning to see technology that offers quote unquote deception as a service. Um, this whole world, like everything else in cyber, is intersecting with automation and autonomy. And so more and more of the companies and the people interested in this are thinking about how to use machine learning, deep learning, reinforcement learning, and artificial intelligence to do these sorts of things as well as other things in um, cybersecurity. Um, Spoofing, pseudo patching, malware, self-infection. I mean, a lot of very interesting evolutions in the technology that will probably benefit from some cover regarding deception. And as others use it against us, of course, we have to think about counter deception techniques, which is a quite different business. And you can be very good at one and not so good at the other. Um, Magicians love to try to figure out other magicians' tricks. And these are the best deception artists in the world, but they're not necessarily the best at figuring out how the other guy's doing his trick. And revelation is a part of the magic business that deals with this very problem that it's really hard to see how the best tricks are done. That's why they're the best tricks. And magicians love this game. And I've talked to a number of them. A lot of them talk to some of our clients as well. So uh, that's in part due to Bart and something he started long ago. What else? We're finally beginning to see some professionals in this field. People who come to the business and say, that's what I do. Not that's what I could do or can do, but that's what I do. So it's become professionalized to an extent. And I guess that's a pretty good summary of some of the things I've seen evolve in this space. In gosh, it's already 7 years since this thing hit the streets. So I guess that's progress. No, I wouldn't be hesitant to advise computer security, cybersecurity, graduate students. Hey, think about this as an area, and there's a number of real strong schools in this business. The Navy Postgraduate School for years has worked this problem. In fact, that's where Bart Whaley was teaching for many years. Um, but also Purdue, Gene Spafford is another father of this business and has been graduating students. Both Carnegie Mellon, Dartmouth, University of North Carolina at Charlotte, a number of schools have really strong programs where this is active and real and serious research domain, and their students are quite smart, quite good, and create really good things. So
You had one piece of advice for someone looking to kind of get started in this space and dive in. What would be your piece of advice for them?
I'd advise them to pick up any of the historical compendiums. Bart Whaley and Hy Rothstein wrote a big book on strategic deception in the military arena with chapter after chapter that covers the spectrum. And it's an easy book to dive into. The chapters are the little vignettes or a couple of pages, but after a while you begin to get the feel, the feeling in the tips of your fingers, as the saying goes. You get the feel for what some of this stuff is and how it works. And um, unfortunately, or military deception is one area where we do have a track record, we have a historical record, we have data, evidence, etc. Magic is another. And there's a number of really interesting pieces of business if you're into the cognitive scientific side of things about how the cognitive aspects of deception work. This has become much more important as things like disinformation, misinformation, um, influence operations have become much more part of our, if you will, daily life. So if someone were interested in that side of it, if someone were interested in doing it, I'd say just take a look at some of these historical examples. See how deception masters of the past have done this. If you're interested in the science, there's some very interesting science going on relative to this. So a lot of opportunity space there for folks. And like I said, I wouldn't have any hesitation to say consider cyber deception as a path in the future, or at least as a part of your quiver of arrows for the business you're in. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been really fantastic. I think we've explored a bunch of really interesting topics and kind of excited to continue to see growth in this field. So this is great.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Getting out there, which I know you all are doing, especially with MITRE Engage, is critical to our role here. And it's critical to the evolution in general of this kind of active cyber defense and active cyber operations. So congratulations to you both for leading such a great effort for MITRE.